The California Board of Parole hearings recently took significant action regarding a long-incarcerated individual. They made the decision to reverse or rescind an offer of parole previously extended. The subject of this decision is Leslie Closner. Closner was convicted of a brutal murder decades ago. He was found guilty of the murder of his girlfriend, Jan Ferguson. The crime occurred nearly 40 years ago, in 1987. Closner received an original sentence of 25 years to life for his actions. He has served a considerable portion of that sentence. As a result of the board's reversal, Closner's current status remains unchanged. He will continue to be incarcerated within the California state prison system. His incarceration will persist until another parole hearing is legally mandated. This process is governed by state law and regulations. The reversal highlights the complex and often contentious nature of parole decisions, particularly in cases involving extreme violence. It underscores the ongoing review process for inmates serving indeterminate sentences. The board's action signifies a determination that, despite previous considerations, Closner was not deemed suitable for release at this time. This decision is subject to specific legal criteria and public safety considerations. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. The crime for which Leslie Closner was convicted occurred in October 1987. It took place in a motel room. Closner and Jan Ferguson had checked into the motel. They were there for Ferguson's daughter's wedding. Their relationship was characterized by significant turmoil. Evidence presented indicated it was an abusive relationship. The incident that led to Ferguson's death began with a fight between the couple. The argument escalated violently. Closner's method of killing was strangulation. He choked Jan Ferguson to death during the altercation. Following the act of killing, Closner engaged in deeply disturbing post-mortem acts. He engaged in sexual acts with her corpse, effectively raping her dead body. In a bizarre sequence of events, he also attempted mouth-to-mouth resuscitation after killing her. This action stands in stark contrast to his other behaviors. Initially, Closner fled the motel room after the killing. He left Ferguson's body behind. However, he later returned to the room. He climbed through a window to regain entry, stating he needed to retrieve his wallet. Upon returning, he committed further acts upon Ferguson's corpse. He had sex with her body again. Most horrifically, he then mutilated her body. He bit off both of her nipples and swallowed them. After these acts, he fled the motel for a second time. He remained at large briefly. He turned himself in to police in Oregon 2 days later. This marked the end of his flight from the scene. The full details of the crime were extensively outlined in parole review documents over the years. These documents provide a grim account of the events. The gruesome nature of the crime, particularly the post-mortem acts, profoundly shocked the public at the time of the investigation and trial. It remains a disturbing case study. The details reveal a level of violence and depravity that goes beyond the initial act of homicide. They point to complex and deeply troubled psychological factors. Understanding these details is crucial for analyzing the subsequent legal and psychological evaluations in the case. They form the foundation for parole suitability assessments. The crime specifics are central to the arguments made by both the defense and the prosecution during legal proceedings and parole hearings. They weigh heavily in the determination of public safety risk. Several factors significantly influence the decision to deny or reverse Leslie Closner's parole. The primary factor is the inherent nature and severity of the crime itself. Extreme violence, particularly the post-mortem mutilation and cannibalism, is a major consideration. Such acts indicate a high level of dangerousness and psychological disturbance. Beyond the immediate crime, Closner's history of violence played a critical role. His past behavior provided context for the 1987 murder. Former California Governor Jerry Brown's decision in 2018, when he previously denied parole, specifically highlighted Closner's prior aggressive behavior. This history was a persistent concern. Evidence showed a pattern of emotional and physical abuse towards Jan Ferguson throughout their 5-year relationship. This was not an isolated incident of violence. Closner allegedly inflicted repeated abuse on Ferguson during their time together. This established a history of control and aggression within the relationship. His behavior also included obsessive tendencies towards Ferguson during periods of separation. This suggests a possessive and potentially dangerous fixation. Furthermore, Closner had a history of an abusive relationship with his ex-wife. This demonstrated a pattern of violence extending beyond his relationship with Ferguson. He had attempted to strangle his ex-wife to the point she couldn't breathe. This prior act of near-fatal violence was a significant red flag. This prior violence led to the dissolution of his marriage. His ex-wife obtained a restraining order against him for her protection. These historical factors paint a picture of a man with a long-standing propensity for violence and control, particularly against intimate partners. This history is a critical component in assessing future risk. Parole boards and governors consider an inmate's entire criminal history and behavioral patterns, not just the commitment offense. Closner's past amplified concerns about his potential for recidivism. The pattern of escalating violence and control in his relationships was a major impediment to finding him suitable for release. It suggested a deep-seated behavioral issue. The severity of the crime combined with this documented history of abuse and violence created a significant hurdle for Closner in demonstrating changed behavior and reduced risk. These factors collectively weighed heavily against granting parole. During parole hearings, Leslie Closner offered explanations for his violent tendencies. He attributed them significantly to his childhood experiences. He cited physical abuse he endured as a child. This was presented as a potential root cause for his later behavior. He also cited witnessing his mother's naked body as a child. This specific memory was discussed in psychological evaluations. A psychologist who evaluated Closner noted conflicting emotions when he discussed his mother. The psychologist observed elements of both anger and lust in his descriptions. The psychologist further observed that Closner seemed sexually excited when describing watching his mother undress. This suggested a complex and potentially pathological connection between early experiences and later sexualized violence. Closner himself stated that he was dealing with negative core issues stemming from early childhood. He explicitly linked these issues to his relationship with his mother. He described his obsession with Jan Ferguson as primarily sexual. He stated this obsession spiraled into heightened tension leading up to the murder. This self-assessment, combined with psychological evaluations, points towards deep-seated psychological issues potentially linked to early trauma and development. Understanding these factors is crucial for assessing his capacity for rehabilitation. Former Governor Brown, in his 2018 denial, concluded that Closner lacked a sufficient understanding of his violent impulses. This indicated that psychological treatment had not fully addressed the underlying causes of his behavior. The psychological profile, developed over years of evaluation, highlighted complex issues. These included difficulties processing emotions, distorted views of relationships, and unresolved childhood trauma. Closner's attempts to explain his actions through his past were considered by the board and the governor. However, the assessment of whether he had genuinely overcome these issues and mitigated his risk was paramount. The psychologist's observations regarding the sexualized nature of his fixation and the link to his mother were particularly concerning. They suggested a potential nexus between early psychological development and the specific, horrific nature of the post-mortem acts. The ongoing assessment of his psychological state and his understanding of his own pathology is a critical component of parole suitability. The conclusion that he still lacked insight into his violent impulses was a major factor in the denial and subsequent reversal. His narrative of childhood trauma provided context, but did not, in the view of the decision-makers, fully explain or excuse the extreme violence and sexualized mutilation. It highlighted areas requiring deeper psychological work. The psychological factors presented in the case underscore the complexity of assessing risk in individuals who have committed such heinous acts. They involve evaluating not just past behavior, but also the potential for future violence based on underlying psychological structures. Former Governor Brown's 2018 decision was clear. He concluded that Leslie Closner posed an unreasonable danger to society if released from prison. This determination was based on the totality of the evidence. It included the crime details, criminal history, and psychological evaluations. The Sutter County District Attorney's Office has maintained a strong commitment to this case. They have actively participated in parole hearings. The DA's office represents the interests of the victim's family. They advocate for justice on their behalf throughout the parole process. They also work to ensure justice for the community as a whole. This includes arguing against the release of individuals deemed a public safety risk. The victim's family has been consistently involved in the process. Their dedication and attendance at numerous hearings have been acknowledged and thanked. Their presence and statements provide a vital perspective to the parole board. They represent the enduring impact of the crime. The parole board's decision to reverse the offer of parole reflects a careful review process. It considers the initial grant of parole and any subsequent information or arguments. The reversal indicates that, upon further review or consideration of new information or arguments, the board determined the initial grant was inappropriate or that circumstances warranted rescission. This process allows for a check on initial decisions. The DA's office likely presented arguments highlighting the severity of the crime, the history of violence, and concerns about Closner's psychological state or lack of insight. These arguments would have been central to the reversal request. The community impact of such a crime is profound and long-lasting. The DA's office plays a role in ensuring the community's safety and sense of justice are considered in parole decisions. The involvement of the victim's family is a critical component of the modern parole process. Their rights and perspectives are legally recognized and considered. The reversal decision provides a measure of closure for the victim's family, ensuring the perpetrator remains incarcerated. It also reinforces the community's expectation that individuals who commit such crimes will serve sentences commensurate with the harm caused and the risk they pose. The legal process surrounding parole for life-term inmates is designed to balance rehabilitation potential against public safety concerns and the gravity of the offense. The Closner case exemplifies the rigorous and often challenging nature of this balance. The outcome underscores the fact that parole is not automatic, even after serving a significant sentence. Suitability is continuously assessed based on multiple complex factors and ongoing risk evaluation.